So in step 11, the goal will be to protect our routes, because now, since we have access to the router, the user can move around either by using the application, which will allow them to navigate from route to route, or by directly modifying the URLs themselves. For example, here, if the user enters my wallet themselves, it will load the component referenced in the application's configuration. What we want to add now is a bit of security, specifically by introducing a new Angular feature called guards, which are software mechanisms that will prevent the user from accessing a specific URL. By adding a configuration to the router in the app..ts file that we've already modified, we can add new information to specify. You can only access this URL under certain conditions. There can be many different conditions. It really depends on the needs of the application. In this example, for this step 11, I'm suggesting a sort of simulated login. So imagining that we've logged into our account, which ultimately allows us to access our toilets. Here, this is a representation of step 11 completed, just to give you an idea. I'm not logged in if I load my wallet. So if I try to navigate to it, you can see that Angular prevents me from doing so and redirects me to the slash. Clicking on login will log us in without entering a username or password. But the principle would be the same. I click on it, and now I'm logged in. And now, when I load this my wallet, this new component, I'm able to load it. Okay? Now, if I load it several times, I'm still logged in. If I click on it again, I log out. Now, if I reload, I'm redirected to the slash. To take a closer look at how it works, we're going to add something to local storage. If you're not familiar with this, when you press F12, you can go to applications. In storage, under local storage, you'll have the ability to add information to this storage space, which we don't necessarily use very often. We'll see later that it's not necessarily the most secure option. So we have an entire section on the security of Angular applications because this data is completely modifiable. For example, here we can check I'm logged out. As a user, I can log in. If I ever reload my wallet, I manage to log in without having to click the login button. So it's something we won't necessarily use a lot, but in any case, it's a mechanism that's quite easy to set up to explore this guard system. So I'm moving on to the start file for step 11. Of course, I'm already on tag 11. The goal is to create a guard that prevents access to my wallet if the user is not logged in using local storage. Local storage is something quite common in the JavaScript world using setItem. We're going to ask it to create a key value association, so add isConnected with the value true or false, depending on whether we are logged in or logged out. Since guard is a new Angular element, there's an associated command line. So we'll use G for generate, the second G for guard. I put it in the int folder, so it's going to look like this. As you can see here, we're starting to get into the core. So core, we've covered everything. We've seen shared, feature, which will contain components that are more at the page level. We can go a bit deeper. We can have features that are half pages, depending on the needs that arise, but that's IT in any case. That was the goal of feature and shared. We've already used it a little, if only by its name, it's pretty obvious. It's something that's shared by all the features. Core, on the other hand, can be a bit trickier to approach, but in any case, you should see it as a place that will inevitably be loaded everywhere in the application. So this is where we'll put things like guards, for example. We'll see later about interceptors. We're going to put quite a few other things in there as well. That's where we'll put those things, especially anything related to authentication, so auth. We can put that in there. I suggest we create that along with a few bits of information that JavaScript developers can easily be aware of. But in any case, to use local storage, we're going to use the standard JavaScript API. It's not something specific to Angular. It's something that's native to JavaScript. So localStorage.get, a string whatever, we want to retrieve the content that we can see visually in the dev application console under local storage. So it's connected here. Here, we're going to return true. And then to change its value, you use setItem, the key, and the new value. So for this step 11, you need to create this guard disconnected, which will read from local storage to check whether the user is connected or not. Update the root file with a keyword called canActivate to add to the object we have. We had pass, which defined in the root configuration object the URL that Angular should use to load what we specify in component. It would load the specified component, and now we can have a canActivate, which will be an array of guards that we can add. Here we can add our created guard. In app component, something fairly simple to achieve this. It will simply be a button that will inject true or false into isConnecting, that is, into local storage. And for now, we'll stop there. In step 11-2, we'll add the dynamic behavior so that when you click, the page will load or not, depending on the situation. For now, we assume that the user, when they are disconnected, when disconnected, let's quickly check. I am indeed disconnected. If they log in, my wallet hasn't loaded. They must manually navigate to my wallet. For now, we'll stop here for step 11. So I'll let you do that, and we'll check it out afterwards. We can take a look at what we've managed to do during this step 11. What needed to be added after generating the guard with the command line, specifically, which was defined in the in file, is a canActivate by providing it with our guard. This guard will retrieve the value of isConnected from local storage. If it is equal to true, we say that the user is connected, which allows Angular to say, since this returned true, then I can load the myWallet component when the user accesses /myWallet. On the app component, something quite simple, just a basic button that uses the click event to capture the user's click and triggers a TypeScript function when I click on it. I retrieve the current value of isConnected from local storage, get item, and I basically toggle it. That is, if it was true, I set it to false, and if it was false, I set it to true. So we have this system that connects and disconnects. There were several ways to do it, not necessarily the best one, but that was the idea. So that wraps up step 11, and now we can move on to step 11-2,